Now, the next story is called The Queen of the Fairies' Hat. The Queen of the Fairies was very proud of her hat. It was said to have magic powers and to be capable of many special and secret activities. The Queen of the Fairies even had a secret name for her hat, and whenever she couldn't find her hat, she would call out the secret name, always making sure that no one could hear her. I know you're wondering what the name of the Queen of the Fairies is. Well, I'll tell you. The Queen of the Fairies' name is Queen Quizalania Questia, Queen of the Fairies. Now one day there was a super strong sea breeze. This super strong sea breeze was even stronger than the strongest wind, and though she tried to hold on to her hat, Queen Quizalania Questia couldn't keep it on her queenly head. The super strong sea breeze picked up her hat and blew it way up high, higher than the highest mountain. And on went Queen Quizalania Questia's hat, so high in fact that it was actually in space. The super strong sea breeze stopped, and Queen Quizalania Questia's hat began to float out in space. It floated, you see, because it was so light, as it had been made of the same stuff as fairy wings. That's why it was full of magic and could do magical and mysterious miracles. Queen Quizalania Questia's hat was so far out in space that it was actually in a space lane. Now, I can hear you wondering what a space lane is. Well, I'll tell you. A space lane is like a highway in space, so all sorts of space vehicles travel along the lane. Now, it so happened that just as Queen Quizalania Questia's hat was quietly floating along that space lane, a supersonic spaceship came flying by. And this supersonic spaceship had a round window right on the top. The window was a lookout spot for the space pilot, and it so happened that that particular window was shaped just like Queen Quizalania's hat. And just as the supersonic spaceship came flying along, Queen Quizalania Questia's hat floated down and sat right on top of the window. The space pilot couldn't see out of the window, and the supersonic spaceship was going so fast that it couldn't stop in time. Crash, boom, bang went the supersonic spaceship. I know you're wondering what the name of the space pilot is, so I'll tell you. The space pilot's name is Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. And how could the supersonic spaceship have a crash? Because it was out in space. But did you forget that it was on the space highway? So there were other space vehicles on the space highway too. But the supersonic spaceship didn't crash into another space vehicle. It careened off the space highway and hit a crystal mountain that was just floating past at that very moment. So what was the space pilot to do? Her supersonic spaceship was a wreck. It could not move as it was now attached to the crystal mountain, which was floating through space. Now, the interesting thing about that particular crystal mountain was that inside it there was a poor trapped creature, and that poor creature had been trapped inside that particular crystal mountain for the past zillion years, and that is a very long time. What kind of creature was it, I can hear you ask? Well, I'll tell you. It was a Saderopoulos. Now, when it had first become trapped inside that crystal mountain, it wasn't a Saderopoulos. No, it was a Smileropoulus. But over the past zillion years, it had gradually evolved into a Saderopoulos from being a Smileropoulus. Sad, but true. But at that very moment, the space pilot, Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle, didn't know anything about the Saderopoulos that was trapped inside the crystal mountain. She didn't even know that Queen Quizalania Questia's hat was on top of her supersonic spaceship, and that is what had caused it to crash. It had all happened so fast. Now, as you all know, in a normal supersonic spaceship, there would have been a warning whistle to our space pilot, Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle, to tell her that she was about to crash and to do something to stop the crash. But, unfortunately, the warning whistle was out to lunch and hadn't thought to put the automatic crash detector on alert. Great pity, don't you think? Because here was our space pilot, Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle, with a smashed-up supersonic spaceship, stranded on a crystal mountain, floating through space to goodness knows where. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle morphed through the wall of her supersonic spaceship outside onto the crystal mountain. She looked around. All she could see was crystal, in all directions. Then she decided to inspect her supersonic spaceship. It was at that moment that she spied Queen Quizalania Questia's hat sitting firmly on top of her supersonic spaceship. So that's what happened, thought Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. She inspected the hat. That looks just like the Queen of the Fairies' hat, she thought. But how did it get way up here? As far as I know, thought Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle, the only time the Queen of the Fairies' hat is not on her head is when there is a super strong sea breeze to blow it off. So I guess that's what must have happened. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle scratched her head. Now how am I going to get my supersonic spaceship off this crystal mountain, she thought. So she decided to climb to the top of the crystal mountain to see what she could see. As Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle reached the top of the crystal mountain, she could see all around her. And once she looked down, she could see all the way through the crystal mountain right to the bottom. It was clear, you see, because it was crystal right through. And as she looked down through the crystal mountain, Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle could see a strange creature inside the mountain. At first she thought it was a Saderopoulos, but when she looked a bit longer she could see that it was a Saderopoulos. The Saderopoulos looked at her so sadly. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle sent a thought message to the Saderopoulos. "What are you doing inside that crystal mountain?" she asked. And back came the thought message from the Saderopoulos. "I thought you would never ask," he said. "I have been trapped inside this crystal mountain for 1,000,000 zillion years, and I am so hungry and thirsty." And he sobbed such a loud and lonely sob that the whole crystal mountain seemed to shake. "But how did you get trapped?" asked Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. "I was blown out of a black hole," said the Saderopoulos, and little wings of hope started to beat inside his heart. Maybe, just maybe, he would be able to be free of the crystal mountain, he dared to think. He had been waiting for so long, 1,000,000 zillion years in fact, and this was the first time, the very first time that anyone had ever landed on the crystal mountain. He had, in fact, given up hope of ever being rescued. "What were you doing in a black hole?" asked Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. "I was flying through a vortex to try out my new space wings, and I accidentally overshot the vortex and was sucked into a black hole. Next thing I knew, I went whoosh straight through the black hole. It was very, very dark in there, and whoosh and bang, boom, kazoom, into the middle of this crystal mountain. And here I have been ever since, for the last 1,000,000 zillion years. Do you have anything to eat? I am so hungry I could eat a space rock." "Well, the first thing to do is to work out how to get you out," said Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. "I'll try to morph my way in and make an exit for you." "Oh, I wish you would," said the Saderopoulos. "I've tried everything I could think of and nothing works. Actually, there is a sign on the floor of this crystal mountain that says the only way to get out is to say the magic words which are sewn into the hatband of the Queen of the Fairies' hat. But I don't have any hats in here, and certainly not the Queen of the Fairies' hat. She's probably wearing that herself." "Well, that is an amazing coincidence," said Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. "In fact, the Queen of the Fairies' hat is why I'm here. Somehow it landed right on top of my viewing window and caused me to crash into this crystal mountain. Just exactly what does the sign say?" The Saderopoulos read the sign again. "It says, 'Stand facing the Great Wishing Mountain near the City of Perpetual Happiness on the planet of extraordinary events in the purple crystal hemisphere of the Galaxy of Dreams.'" "Okay," said Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. "Just a minute, I have to get my supersonic spatial adjusting calibrating compass." Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle disappeared back inside her supersonic spaceship and collected her supersonic spatial adjusting calibrating compass. As she returned, she held it up to the heavens and squinted in one eye. She dialed all the dials on her supersonic spatial adjusting calibrating compass. Finally, she sent the thought message down to the Saderopoulos. "You need to move 3 jumps to the left," she said. So the Saderopoulos lumbered to his feet and jumped 3 times to the left. "Now what?" he thought messaged her. "Well, what does the sign say?" "Oh, sorry, I forgot I have to read the rest." So the Saderopoulos jumped back 3 jumps to the right so that he could read the rest of the sign. The Saderopoulos read the rest of the sign, which said, "When you're in the correct position, you must hold your hands above your head and say the magic words that are inside the Queen of the Fairies' hat with all the goodness you have in your heart." And he took 3 jumps back to the left so that he would be in the correct position facing the Great Wishing Mountain near the City of Perpetual Happiness on the planet of extraordinary events in the purple crystal hemisphere of the Galaxy of Dreams. "Oh, I forgot, messaged Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. I forgot to get the Queen of the Fairies' hat. I'll be right back. Reaching up to the top of her supersonic spaceship, Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle took hold of Queen Quizzolana Questia's hat, but it would not budge. She tugged and tugged. No, it did not move. Now what, thought Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. Suddenly she remembered how gentle fairies are, so gently that you would hardly know when she was doing it. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle slowly, ever so slowly, lifted Queen Quizzolana Questia's hat down from the top of her supersonic spaceship. She looked all over it, but she could not see any words. She turned it over, but she could not see any words inside it. She looked at all the feathers that adorned Queen Quizzolana Questia's hat. No words. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle was puzzled. I must have missed something, she thought. So she started to examine Queen Quizzolana Questia's hat again. She held it up close to her supersonic space goggles so that she could see every little square inch of the Queen's hat. Suddenly she noticed a tiny lump just tucked under the inside band of the hat. She noticed that it had been sewn carefully into the Queen's hat with golden thread so that it looked like a little door. She pressed on the tiny doorknob and the door swung open. Suddenly golden fairy dust fell to her feet. Oh, goodness, what have I done? Thought Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. There is fairy dust all over my supersonic space boots. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle went to shake off the fairy dust from all over her supersonic space boots, but just then she stopped. There are words in the fairy dust, she thought. So carefully, ever so carefully, that she would not disturb the words, Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle leant down to read, Fairies are fabulous, magical and true. They do good works and they will always help you. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle was excited. They must be the words hidden in the Queen of the Fairies' hat, she thought. So with a lighter heart she went back to the Saderopoulos. Are you standing in the right position? She thought, messaged him. I think so. I took the 3 jumps to the left. Just a minute, said Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. I will check your position on my supersonic spatial adjusting calibrating compass, and she double-checked that the Saderopoulos was in just the right position to finally be released from the Crystal Mountain after his long sojourn of 1,000,000 zillion years. Now these are the words you must say, said Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. Fairies are fabulous, magical and true. They do good works and they will always help you. And don't forget to put your hands above your head before you say them, and your heart must be full of goodness, she added. The Saderopoulos thought for a moment. To fill my heart with goodness, I will think of my mother. So he filled his heart with goodness by thinking of his mother. He held his hands up over his head and said the magic words, Fairies are fabulous, magical and true. They do good works and they will always help you. Wow, what happened next was amazing. The whole Crystal Mountain seemed to shake, and then pathways appeared all through the mountain. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle was shaken back down to her supersonic spaceship. The Saderopoulos slowly got to his feet, because he'd been bowled over by the Crystal Mountain when all the pathways opened. And guess what happened next? The Saderopoulos started to change back into a Smileropoulos. He was so happy that finally, after 1,000,000 zillion years, he could escape from the Crystal Mountain. He was not sure which path to choose, so he looked up to where Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle and her supersonic spaceship were, and he followed the closest pathway. Soon he had reached them. You look different, said Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle. Yes, now that I'm free, I have changed back to my old self again, so I'm a Smileropoulos, just like I used to be, he smiled. As he looked at Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle's supersonic spaceship, he said, Wow, your ship looks like a Saderopoulos, not a Smileropoulos. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle didn't get the joke. She was worried. How will I get my supersonic spaceship working again, she thought. Suddenly the Smileropoulos had an idea. Why don't you do what I just did to escape the Crystal Mountain? If it works for a trapped Saderopoulos, it should work for your sad spaceship. Good thought, said the captain. I had just come to that conclusion myself. So Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle got out her supersonic spatial adjusting calibrating compass, checked that she was standing facing the Great Wishing Mountain near the City of Perpetual Happiness on the planet of extraordinary events in the purple crystal hemisphere of the Galaxy of Dreams. Then she held her hands up above her head and said the magic words which she had discovered in the fairy dust inside Queen Quizzolana Questia's hat. Fairies are fabulous, magical and true. They do good works and they will always help you. And then Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle and the Smileropoulos stood back as her supersonic spaceship started to shake and shake, and finally it sat there on the side of the Crystal Mountain quietly. Captain Spanaronia Santiana Sparkle was delighted. She could see that her supersonic spaceship was whole again, with not a dent or a scratch to be seen. She got into the captain's seat and turned to the Saderopoulos. Give you a lift anywhere? You know, Hawaii is a microcosm of the world, with people here from all over the world, and Noa Hawaii is a microcosm of the traditional arts of the world, with beautiful patterns from many countries. They've been in business for 38 years with wonderful Hawaii-designed batik clothing. Their hand-dyed and handmade clothes have patterns that are based on traditional kapa and tapa designs from Hawaii, Polynesia, Micronesia, Indonesia, even New Zealand and Africa. So check out all of the wonderful items that Noa has on their website, which is www.noanoahawaii.com. So I'll be back next week, so bye for now.